Hey, what's going on, good people? This is Gardner Douglas, and I'm your Oyster Ninja. Today we got a great show lined up, just like every week, of course. But I'm really, it's crazy. Every week I say this, but this is a great show. This is another great show lined up. It's just crazy. I guess it's just part of podcasting, but I feel like every show is my best show. Every show gets better. Every show improves on something. So, I really hope you guys are enjoying it. Again, as always, I'm always asking for your feedback. So let me know what you think about this episode. Let me know what you're thinking about, the podcast in general, whatever. Of course, you can hit me up by email. That's oysterninjapc@gmail.com. And, of course, you can hit us up on our Facebook page, Oyster Ninja Podcast, and on Instagram, Oyster Ninja PC. Okay, cool. So, like I said, great show. This week we're talking to Mr. Jorge Bogantes. He works with Anacostia Watershed Society. And let me tell you, you talking about amazed. I was, first of all, thrown so much knowledge, surprised. It's just crazy what's really, right under your nose. Of course, this podcast this episode focuses on the Anacostia Watershed River. Of course, that involves Prince George's County, Montgomery County, D.C., of course, all of that. And it's just so much going on, and it's great to see, people coming together trying to make it great again. How crazy that sounds, but you're trying to make the watershed great again. They're trying to make it so you can go fishing and keep your fish and eat your fish without second guessing it. They're trying to make it where you can go swimming, without. He goes into it a little bit during the episode. So, like I said, it's a great show. So much knowledge. The episode was based on, me just trying to, I try and center myself around things I want to educate myself on. And I've been following them on Facebook and Instagram for a while. And a couple posts just, struck me by surprise when they were talking about mussels, freshwater mussels in the Anacostia River. So I contacted them. They were nice enough to hit me back. So one thing led to another. I'm there talking with them. But yeah, freshwater mussels in the Anacostia River that are, being restored, just like anything else, it takes time, but it's looking real good. And they just, started, or not just started, but they just, I don't even want to give too much stuff away. That's how much information is packed in this podcast. I'm going to let Jorge take over, and thank you guys for listening, and I'll be with you in a few minutes. Hey, what's going on, good people? This is Gardner Douglas, and today we're sitting with Anacostia Watershed, and I have Mr. Jorge Bogantes. And I'm going to let him come in and introduce himself and got some good stuff to tell you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. My name is Jorge Bogantes. I'm the Natural Resource Specialist here at the Anacostia Watershed Society. We're here in Bladensburg, Maryland, but we work throughout the Anacostia Watershed. We includes eastern half of D.C., parts of Prince George's County and Montgomery County. This is a special year because this is the year of the Anacostia. It was designated as such by D.C. government and PG County, and is celebrating the centennial of Anacostia Park and Frederick Douglass, because he lived in Southeast DC, and many other historic and environmental features. Well, one of the main environmental feature river restoration event is that they recently launched the tunnel, the Anacostia River tunnel for the Clean Rivers project, which is cutting sewage by 80%, which is a major thing. And this is the result of AWS work when we filed a lawsuit years ago to DC Water, or WASA, that was the name before, and that kind of spearheaded the process of redoing the combined sewer overflow into a more modern system that to minimize or avoid pollution into the Anacostia River, sewage pollution, because that was an infraction of the Clean Water Act. And so like this Monday, Friday morning, we had 2 inches of rain, and it actually collected like 170 million gallons of sewage.
Wow.
Only like 20 million gallons were, well, that's a lot still, but it significantly cut the amount of sewage as it was designed. So again, because of these milestones, this was declared the year of the Anacostia River. There's a hashtag in every YODA 2018
right.
for social media. So we're very excited about that, and really, yeah, this is a turning point. There's a lot of good things happening, positive things for the river, and we're working towards making the river fishable and swimmable by 2025. So this was the first phase of the tunnel. The second phase will finish in like 5 years or so. That's gonna cut sewage by 98%. So that's significant.
What is the tunnel? And before the tunnel was actually there, what was happening to the sewage?
So the DC used to have an old-fashioned, like 100-year-old combined sewer overflow system. So when it rained more than half inch, the storm water mixed with the sewage and then drained into the Anacostia, the Potomac, and the Rock Creek. But the Anacostia got the biggest share and the biggest share of pollution. So that's why AWS took that action in the 90s to file a lawsuit against DC Water, because again, it was an infraction of the Clean Water Act, and that's a lot of sewage, and we need like no fecal pollution in order to make the river swimmable, and that was a big problem, and still a big problem, but greatly diminished after this first phase of the Clean Rivers project.
Nice. The tunnel, what is it? Like, it's just...
Yeah, so it's kind of like a storage. It's like a 26 feet in diameter tunnel. It's a huge tunnel, and it's pretty long. I don't know the specifics, the engineering, but yeah, it pretty much stores the sewage, and then it is pumped into Blue Plains water treatment plant. And again, before, these all used to just dump into the river. So,
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, that's good stuff. And you said it's doing what, 20% now?
Yeah. No, 80 is cutting sewage by 80%. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's a huge. This is really a game changer for the river, because we're gonna after this year, and from now on, we're really gonna start seeing huge improvements in the river, like in submerged aquatic plants, mussels, fish, and a lot of the biodiversity, the aquatic biodiversity is just gonna improve from here on. Yeah.
That's great news.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great news.
Yeah.
So what are we expecting to see as far as like wildlife come? Are they going to come back? Are they already there, or is it going to be more wildlife coming back into the Anacostia?
Well, I expect the biggest changes will be like in the underwater grasses, or that we call submerged aquatic vegetation, SAV. So the SAV beds are going to increase a lot, because the problem before was the murkiness. The river is too murky, so these plants grow completely underwater. So if the water is murky, they cannot photosynthesize, so they cannot grow. So now with clearer water, they can grow pretty well. And these plants, these submerged aquatic vegetation are critical because they filter sediment, pollutants. They are nurseries for fish, crayfish, and aquatic invertebrates, and mussels. So there's a lot of life as a result of these SAV beds. So the better clarity, the more SAV we're going to have in the waters. And we're already seeing, AWS has monitored the water clarity for over a decade in the river. And in the last 3 years, we've seen better water clarity. In the last 3 summers particularly, we've seen even before the Clean Rivers project. So that has been a pattern because, all the advocacy and all the cleaning efforts going on throughout the watershed. So we were already seeing some improvements, but with the Clean Rivers project, it's just gonna be great from here on. And again, more SAV is gonna mean more fish, more crayfish, more mussels, more everything pretty much, more birds.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah.
Right, because they'll have food to eat.
Yeah.
And then everything else, it's just crazy. That's one thing that really amazes me about Mother Nature. It's just the full circle of everything.
Yeah.
One thing affects another.
Right.
And, if you take one of those things out, things change, and sometimes, it's not always for the best, a lot of times.
Yeah, and the submerged aquatic vegetation, it can be very fragile. There's numbers from DOE, the District Department of Energy and the Environment. They monitor the acreage of SAV. So you can see how it was pretty bad in years where we had hurricanes, it was in the 90s. I wasn't living here, so I forget the names, but when there was a big hurricane, that means murky water and a lot of disturbance, then the SAV population went down. And then in other years that were more normal, the SAV was going up. So in the last few years, it's been going up and up and up because of the water clarity improvements.
Right.
Yeah.
So what kind of fish are called Anacostia home?
There's 70 species of fish in the river, but some of the remarkable ones are the migratory fish, like the rockfish. We have been seeing rockfish, especially here, like Bladensburg Waterfront Park. In the last few years, we've seen more anglers catching rockfish. Some are small, so they need to throw them back in the water because of the regulations. But that's a good sign that we've been seeing more rockfish that they migrate from the bay.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, this is the World Fish Migration Day is happening Saturday. It's a worldwide celebration on migratory fish because of all the benefits, economic and ecological and all that. So that's a good one happening. And at the same time, it's our Earth Day cleanup day. So that's our biggest volunteer event. So anyway, back to fish. So we have rockfish, we have shad. The shad are running at this time of the year, American shad and alewife. We have white perch is another migratory fish from the Chesapeake Bay. And then there's others that have been introduced, some bad actors, others not so bad, like blue cats, according to the Maryland DNR, Department of Natural Resources research. Apparently they can be bad because they eat a lot of other things, including mussels and other fish and other things, and they were introduced from the Mississippi Basin. And, they can grow pretty big.
Oh, yeah, I've seen some big.
80 pounds or so, I think is the record for Maryland. So we have channel cats, blue catfish, and flathead now catfish. They are all introduced from other parts of they are Native American species, but not native to the Anacostia River.
Right.
So they are causing impacts. Actually, the northern snakehead fish has been so famous. It was introduced in 2005, I believe, in Crofton, Maryland, at a pond. And according to the Virginia Tech research, they are not as bad as we thought.
Okay.
Their populations are plateauing, or in some cases even going down as a result of harvesting.
Right.
Because they've become a popular game fish. We see people here boats with platforms. They are boat fishing,
Right.
so there's a lot of fishing pressure on the Zinca. So that has helped perhaps keep the species at bay. So, and then others like carp, which we see some giant carp like 20 pounds. Those were introduced, I think, like in the 1800s or so, a long time ago. They do have their impacts. They mess up with the sediment and all that. So again, there's a lot of things that have been introduced and species that are native, like the first ones I mentioned, shad and rockfish. They're actually the only native catfish is the brown bullhead. It's the small catfish.
Okay.
That one is native to the river. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any particular reason why the other catfish were introduced? Was it to
mostly for fishing? Yeah, people wanted to have them around here because they were from other parts of the country.
Okay.
And for fishing purposes.
That's it. That's all.
Yeah,
wow.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
See how we do? We just come in and
Yeah.
want to do stuff our way.
Yeah.
So let's talk about these mussels. The reason why I had to get up with Anacostia Watershed, because I saw these mussels on Facebook, and I was like, I didn't even know, that we grew mussels here locally.
Right.
So let's talk about that. Where do we start?
Years ago, when I've been here at AWS for 9 years. When I first started here, some former coworkers and just people that support us, they asked me about mussels, and I was there's no mussels in the river. But I started seeing mussels. I do a lot of wetland work, wetland planting, so I'm in the river. So I started seeing shells and even live mussels. Like one time with a colleague, we were fishing for a fish tissue analysis study from University of Maryland, and so the friend snapped. He was reeling in the line, and he snapped a mussel in the fishing line, and it was I sent some records to the Maryland Biodiversity Project, and they identified as eastern floater, which now we know is one of the most common species up and down the river. So anyway, we started seeing more and more mussels, and I said, well, maybe there's something here. There's a restoration opportunity, and that's exactly what we started learning more about mussels. We partnered with the Maryland DNR to do a survey of the species that we have in the river, and again, we found 8 species.
Wow.
To our surprise, and actually 6 of those species are considered rare, threatened in Maryland and DC. They are either listed as a species of greatest conservation need, or like in peril, depending on the conservation listing that you look at. But yeah, so we found 8 species of these creatures that they clean the water. I mean, an adult mussel filters between 10 and 20 gallons of water per day. I mean, it's not as much as the oysters. The oysters can filter 50 gallons or so.
Right.
But it's pretty decent. And at places like at Buzzard Point, the confluence with the Potomac River, that's where we have what they call mussel beds. There's hundreds of mussels in a small area, and because of the SIV, actually, there's a submerged aquatic vegetation bed, so it's perfect habitat for mussels. Mussels are thriving there. So if you add up the capacity, the filtering capacity of all these mussels, it can be pretty impressive. We don't have the actual numbers, but I mean, it's in the order of millions of gallons a day that they're filtering. So,
wow.
So yeah.
So you say that's at Buzzard Point?
Buzzard Point, yeah.
Is that like a public place or?
Yeah, you can go. I mean, it's right now. Are you familiar with James Creek Marina? There used to be a Buzzard Point Marina, but they removed it, and now there's James Creek Marina. Those are owned by the National Park Service.
Mm-hmm.
And they're actually building a lot. They are building the soccer stadium, and then they are building some residential developments there. And but yeah, you can go to that area. It's funny because when you go there, it looks like a very just crappy urban, like industrial place that is changing. But when you look in the water, that's where the diversity is. Like outside of the water, it's just like a small forest buffer, some just not so interesting trees or forest, or barely a forest, but the diversity is actually in the water. Once you look in the water, that's where the greatness is.
I like that. So you said mussels filter 10 to 20 gallons. What other benefits do they have to Mother Nature, or what else do they do?
Oh yeah, they are great because they are filter feeders. They also allow the sediment to settle in particular areas, and they are also food for other animals, muskrats, catfish and other fish, raccoons and other animals. And even when they die, the shells work as microhabitat for like snails, for fish. We found fish and crayfish in dead mussel shells that are kind of shut, especially during the colder times. So I found crayfish inside, lug snails, and some fish like mummichug. They like to use them as nesting spots. So even after they die, they are useful for the ecosystem. So again, cleaning the water, helping kind of settle sediment, being the food for other animals, and serving as habitat for other animals. So yeah.
So what's the perfect habitat for a mussel to thrive?
Yeah, well, I think Buzzard Point has great conditions because it's mostly kind of like it's mostly gravel and sandy bottom. There's some muddy spots that is not overly mucky. It's just the mud that the submerged aquatic plants filter. So just a few inches thick. And there's also submerged aquatic vegetation that helps. But they are really anywhere. We found in the upper part of the river, in mucky areas. They also like muddy, mucky areas. Yeah, if they are maybe they are overly mucky and low oxygen, or even with pollutants, of course they wouldn't like that. But so they like muddy. But I think gravel, sandy, mixed with a little bit of mud is kind of like the optimum. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So so like oysters, you know how they cluster together, are mussels the same way, or they just kind of do their own thing like individually?
Yeah, these ones are interesting because unlike the marine mussels, or you must have heard about the invasive zebra mussels, which knock on wood, we don't have them in the river yet, but they are in the bay, like the Susquehanna River. But so these kind of mussels, and also the marine mussels, like the ones you get at the restaurant, they develop some fibers, protein fibers that are called bisal threads. So these fibers help them attach to either other mussels or surfaces, rocks or any other surface. Now these mussels, the freshwater mussels, some have the capacity to do that, but they are not attached like that. We always find them, they just bury in the bottom, or they're just on top of the bottom, and they grow individually. They don't grow like clustered like the oyster or those other mussels. There might be a lot of mussels in a single area, like the mussel bed I was talking about, but they are not attached to each other. They grow individually.
Right.
Yeah.
So do they spawn also? I know you was telling me a little bit when we did the little tour. So what is their process?
Yeah, the life cycle is fascinating because they are actually parasitic. There's a stage where they are parasitic. So first, the males, during the breeding season, the male releases the sperm in the water column, and the female has to filter the sperm, fertilizes the eggs. So she keeps the eggs in the gills. So it's funny because this kind of would be like the lungs having the same double purpose as lung and uterus. We put it in human terms.
Right.
So they develop the eggs in the gills, in their lungs, quote unquote, and then the larvae hatch and they grow inside the gills for some time. And then when they are ready, they will release those larvae, which technically they're called glochidia. They release them into fish. So they attach to the fish body. They might be there for 2 weeks or a month, and they grow kind of like, I used to normally say like ticks or lice. They're parasitic. They kind of feed off from the fish bodily fluids, and then when they are done, they just drop off from the fish body, drop on the bottom, and start growing as tiny mussel, like the size of a dot on a book. And the first stage, they use their foot. You know, they have like this, it looks like a tongue. They use their foot to kind of grab the food particles and eat them. That's like a short first stage after the parasitic stage. And then after that, they just start filtering, as you know, as we know them, as filter feeding mussels. So, and from then on, they just start growing the shell bigger and bigger. I mean, we find some like LY floaters that are, you know, pretty big. That would be like, you know, 6-7 inches in length or so. So yeah, that's pretty much the life cycle. And the species might have specific host fish that they like. For example, the Eastern Elliptio uses the American eel mostly, interestingly. The LY floater uses fish from the shad family, shad, herring, alewife. The Eastern floater is very generalist. They might use carp, and they might use largemouth bass, bluegills, mummy chub, and whatever is around. That's why they are everywhere, because they are generalists. I mean, there's even cases from other parts of the country where they are just specific to one species, like, you know, in the mountains of Tennessee and all that. It might be just like, or right here in the mountains here, like brook trout only, or darter, or some just one species. So they are very vulnerable. You know, if there's a fish blockage or if something happens to the fish,
right,
then the mussel is pretty imperiled. So, yeah.
How long do they live? Like, what's the lifespan of a mussel?
Yeah, it could be a few years to 100 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so they are long lived.
Do they keep growing the whole time?
Yeah, they just keep growing the shell.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, they don't shed, because some people ask me this, like, you know, like crustaceans, like crayfish or lobster, that they shed.
Right.
You know, they just keep growing the same shell.
Right.
And actually, and there's the experts have a technique of estimating the age of individuals by looking at the growth rings, kind of in a tree. But you need a microscope, and it's complicated.
Right.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Yeah, you can estimate the age by looking at their growth.
So I was again, I'm on your Facebook page, and I was looking, and so you collected some mussels from the river, and they spawn. So what's going to happen to those baby mussels?
Okay, so yeah, we just started that process. So in March, late March, we collected our first, what we call the brood stock. These are 4 females that were gravid, or, you know, quote unquote pregnant.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
One more question before we get into that.
Yeah.
Are mussels like oysters, like they only spawn during certain parts of the year, or do they spawn all year round?
Yeah, it depends on the species, but some might be only in the fall, or others in the spring, or others might be like on the summer. So yeah, I guess it depends on what species. Like the ones we're working with are mostly like in the spring. So yeah. So what we did was we collected 4 gravid females, or, you know, pregnant females with larvae. The way you know they're pregnant, you have to, like, carefully, using like a nasal speculum or something, like inverse plier, to open them a little bit, peek inside into the gills. When they are gravid, you can see the gills are engorged. They're kind of like ribbed and swollen. That's when the larvae are in there, and so we collected 4 females, took them to the Harrison Lake National Fish Hatchery in Virginia. That's in Charles City, Virginia, near Richmond, and they are the experts in mussel culture. So what they do, or actually, I brought the females this week. They did their job, and by that I mean that they kind of secluded them with the largemouth bass, the house fish, kept them there for a few days until they released the larvae into the bass, and then they attached to the bass. In this case, I think they're mostly attached to the gills of the bass, and then the bass are gonna be in a tank for a couple of weeks until the larvae drop to the tank bottom, and they have a system to collect them, and then they're gonna know we're gonna know how many we're gonna get, and then they keep feeding them with this algae cocktail, and they just keep growing and growing.
Right.
Like a millimeter a month or more. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those were the first 4. So I actually released them yesterday. I brought them from the hatchery and I released them at the same spot where I found them in Buzzard Point. And then I actually dropped off. We found an LY floater, a gravid female of the LY floater. So in the hatchery, they had the herring ready. So they're going to put her with the herring and do the infection, and then we'll see how many mussels we get from that female. So yeah, it's an interesting process, and yeah, if you get a chance to go to the Harrison Lake National Fish Hatchery, it's nice in Charles City, Virginia. They also have some ponds and some trails there on the property. So yeah,
that's pretty cool. So once the baby mussels get to a certain size, then what? Will they be released into like the buzzard, or where will they go?
Yeah, so we're gonna do like an experiment where we're gonna keep them in what they call fish spawning baskets. These are like kind of like a laundry basket with it's kind of makeshift. We use like swimming pool noodles to keep and tie them with zip ties along the edge to make them floatable.
Right.
And then, it has like a screen on the bottom and a little bit of sand so they can bury. And then we're going to keep like 300 mussels per basket at Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens at the ponds. And then Heritage Marsh, and then down by the Yards Park in D.C., there's like a dock where they do kayaking.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to keep 4 there, 4 at Heritage, and like 16 baskets at the Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens. So we're going to monitor growth, see how they grow and the survival, and then we're going to keep them in those baskets for about a year, and after that year, we're going to release them into the river. We don't know where yet, because also the river, I don't know if you're aware, but they're doing like the sediment study. They are looking at the legacy toxic sites. The river has like 5 or 6 legacy toxic sites that have a lot of nasty pollutants from the past. So they were doing a comprehensive study to kind of pinpoint where those are and what kind of pollutants. And now the next step will be to fix that problem, which could be like capping or dredging or a mix. We don't know yet, and we don't know where. It depends on it. So
dredging could help that process?
Yeah, like scoop the polluted sediment.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, now that's under discussion now by DC government and many partners in the region, including ourselves.
And who's doing that study, the sediment study?
Well, that was DOE, the District Department of Energy and Environment. They paid Tetra Tech, which is a big consulting firm, and they did all that analysis. It took them like a year or so. So yeah, that's actually kind of the next big step in cleaning the river after the tunnels. This is going to be critical because the river is not going to be fishable and swimmable until we clean the legacy toxics, and also that's kind of determined. Hopefully, by the time we're going to be ready to release the mussels, which is going to be like in late summer of 2019 or even the next year, we should probably have a better idea where they're doing whatever they're going to do, dredging, capping, or a mix of the two.
What is capping?
Capping is just putting like sand and covering the polluted sediment. Yeah.
Okay, so putting a cap on it.
Yeah, put a cap on it. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I mean, they all have the risks, so that's why it's a careful And also political, regardless to say process.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you never hear anybody saying, "Yeah, let's go dredge."
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, "When they're gonna dredge it?" Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. It might be a mix. We don't know yet.
Right. Okay. Cool. So, are we gonna see any oysters in Anacostia?
No, because this is a freshwater system.
Of course.
So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, you spoke a little bit about the biggest volunteer event. What's going on with that?
Oh yeah. So this Saturday is our Earth Day cleanup. April 21st in the morning, 9 to noon. So we do this every year to celebrate Earth Day and to bring together partners. It's not only us. We really work with people from like the Friends of Group, Friends of Sligo Creek, Neighbors of Novus Branch, many other people in the watershed, and sponsors and groups of volunteers. So this year we're going to have like 40 sites or so. Normally we have over 2,000 people every year.
Nice. Cleaning
up trash. And so yeah, that's a part of our campaign to educate the public and engage the public in the cleaning and restoration of the river.
Great. I guess one of the biggest questions I should have asked in the beginning, what's the difference between the mussels that we eat in restaurants and the mussels that we have in the Anacostia River?
Yeah, so the mussels we eat in restaurant are mostly from the Saltwater. They often come from the Prince Edward Island in Canada, eastern Canada, I think. And so that's the main producer in North America. So chances are when you buy a grocery store or get our local restaurant is from Canada. And those are saltwater mussels. What we have here are freshwater mussels from a family or lineage that is only in fresh waters. Yeah. So our mussels are going to look more kind of like elliptical in shape.
Right.
The marine mussels are going to look slightly more kind of triangular, if you will.
Okay. And anything else you want to put out there?
Yeah, keep an eye on our social media at Anacostia WS on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and also on our website, which we have a new website for more on the mussel project. Oh, another one that is great, and I didn't mention, and is that so we have that restoration part that I talked about, but then at the same time we're going to have a very exciting educational component, which is the mussels in the classroom.
Okay.
We're going to work with 5 schools to start with, and we're going to give, let's say, like a classroom is going to get a 10-gallon tank with 5 mussels. And they're going to keep those mussels for 2 weeks or 1 month in the classroom. They're going to feed them with the algae, and they're going to learn about mussel biology and all that. And then at the end of that, they will come to our floating baskets and then eventually into the river.
Right.
So this will be a great education component for the kids that we're hoping to expand in the future. This is just kind of the pilot. We have other similar projects for other, like the shad program or rice rangers where the kids propagate wetland plants. So this will be the first one with mussels. So we're excited about that. And we actually modeled this program after one in Ohio. We learned about that online, and we reach out to them in Ohio, and they also work with the Kentucky Department of Natural Resources, and they are using another species, but we're pretty much replicating what they do here with the local species. So it'll be actually a first one in the region. We haven't heard of any other similar efforts. So yeah,
right.
we're that's part of why we're so excited about this mussel effort.
No doubt.
So it's pretty much a new for us, a new for the Anacostia, and yeah, so it's a good thing. Yeah.
So have you guys already reached out to the schools that you're gonna be working with, or?
Our educators are, I think they have 5 schools that are interested. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What I know we came here for mussels, but now I'm like, yeah, I got that itch. What other restoration programs are y'all doing?
Oh yeah, we do. So wetland restoration. In the wetland, we propagate native plants like wild rice, which used to be abundant. I don't know if you've been to Jug Bay in the Patuxent River. So that's what the Anacostia used to look like in the 1700s. There was this long expanses of wild rice because of so much, destruction in the wetlands. Wild rice was very diminished. So what AWS has been doing is propagating wild rice. We actually collect the seed from the Patuxent River at Jug Bay, and every year we seed it. Either in pots or mud bowls, or with the kids. We have Rice Rangers program. The kids grow the plants in the classroom, and then now at this time of the year, they go to the marsh and plant them. Yeah.
How many years have you been doing that?
That's a good 6 years or so.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the wetland work. We also do a lot of tree planting in degraded stream banks or in the river, but also in LID, and I'll mention a little bit more about that, and also invasive plant control and native plant revegetation in other areas, like meadow restoration. Right across the street here, we have a new 6-acre meadow, because it used to be a FEMA floodway, and we cannot grow trees because that's the Army Corps of Engineers policy. So instead, we persuaded them to create a meadow, and they liked it, and now we're growing a native meadow. So it's a better version of what the habitat they have, which they mow and spray. So we have now a nice meadow with grasses and wildflowers along the river here on the FEMA floodway. So again, tree plantings, a lot of native plant revegetation. We also do the low impact development work, like with programs like River Smart Communities in DC, or Treating and Teaching, where we create like rain gardens or install cisterns to manage stormwater, bioretention cells, or trees, but more like in schools or churches and public places to manage stormwater. Yeah. So that's another component. And again, the trash cleanups. We also do a lot of outdoor recreation. We have paddle nights every week in the summer, free for the public. We offer pontoon boat tours and nature walks and things like that. So yeah, we try to engage as much people to explore the river. Yeah, because it's changing a lot. I mean, it's not like when AWS started in 1989, but there's still a stigma. Some people think, oh, the Anacostia is, so we're trying to eliminate that and bring people to the river, and it's been working. More people are interested because there's more, we have the Anacostia River Walk Trail that goes all the way to Anacostia Park, and so there's a lot of, green spaces and outdoor opportunities to explore the river. So that's what we're trying to do: engage people, demonstrate what works for the river in terms of restoration, and just engage them in the cause of cleaning and restoring the river, making it fishable and swimmable by 2025. That's our goal. So yeah, it used to sound crazy, but not so much anymore.
Right.
Clean river, the tunnels and all that is we're getting there. Yeah. So
I think that's great, man.
Thank you so much for coming here and hearing our story.